Blake, I met a billionaire.
Oh, did you ask him if money could buy happiness?
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who doesn't need money to be happy. I just need my friends. And I'm here with my co-host who is still chasing them dollar bills, y'all, Toby Walters.
I feel like it's less impressive these days to actually meet a billionaire. I've heard other friends say like, oh, there's a billionaire that goes to my church and I didn't even know it. Like it sounds a little callous, but there's more of them out there now than you would expect, just the way the economy works now.
Well, this is getting way off topic for Church Gear, but like if you do look at wealth income inequality in America, the top 1% has gotten a lot more money recently, yes.
Yeah, and a lot more of them. But this billionaire apparently I met, I didn't even know it. He's a very like unassuming and very nice person. So it's funny, my friend introduced me to him, and how he introduced me, he said, hey, this is my buddy Toby. He's a douchebag from San Diego.
I am so glad some other people know how to give you heck.
And then the guy introduced himself back. He's like, oh, that's great. I'm a douchebag from LA. So, I do have something in common with a billionaire. I am, a multi-hundredaire.
Toby, aspiring to be a fellow douchebag billionaire is a far cry from aspiring to be like Jesus. I'm just saying, we don't need to have a full...
Jesus is a spiritual billionaire. Is that accurate to say?
Maybe. I don't know. This is getting odd.
But anyways, I was invited to a celebrity pickleball tournament. Have you ever gone to a fundraising event where celebrities go and they'll be invited to raise money for good causes?
No, Toby, I'm not a celebrity. Neither are you. Who did you barnacle on to get into this?
So a good friend of mine works for a mental health and addiction organization and does...
Oh, you were one of the patients.
I was one of the case studies. I was the before model.
You're the person they put up there and say, this is the person we need to help.
Yes. So, it was pretty minor celebrities. It wasn't like a, red carpet kind of event, but there was some former NFL players. And
goody.
I did text you. And so Eric Decker and Golden Tate, they were wide receivers, right?
I still can remember being in middle school, adding high school, to my fantasy team at the beach on a trip with my girlfriend's family. I have very fond memories of Eric Decker.
Okay. I think he did pretty well. I'm not sure if he won, but I think he was in the finals or whatever.
The finals. That's basketball.
Yeah, it was quickly apparent. I did see kind of the list of the celebrities who were going to be a part of it ahead of time. And I recognized one name. I'm a big NBA guy. And so I recognized one name. His name is Myers Leonard. And he was an NBA center. And so immediately everybody can tell who he is because he's 7 feet tall. And when you see a 7-footer around normal people, I feel bad for the guy, but he looks like a giant. He is a giant. And have you ever watched NBA on TV and it just looks like, oh, they're normally...
Well, yeah, because it's all giants amongst giants.
But when you stand next to one, I quickly realized, oh, that's why I can never play in the NBA.
Man, that is absolutely wild. I don't know if I've ever been around someone 7 feet. I've been around a couple 6.5-ish. That's tall.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen any other NBA players. I do remember I was at a restaurant and they were setting up cameras, and this was a few years back. And I said, well, what are you guys filming? And they said, oh, Shaq's coming in for promoting a new TV show that he's part of. I wasn't there when Shaq was there, but I assume he is a gigantic human being. And so it was a fundraiser. And so there was an auction in order to raise money, and they auctioned off a few cool things. And so they handed us a paddle, and I'm just a little nervous because there's people with a lot of money and I have a little money.
You have lunch money.
Yes. And Blake, can you imagine if you kind of get caught up in the moment and you have a paddle and you raise it, and then all of a sudden you are beholden to your paddle raise?
This is a bad scenario for you, Toby, uniquely. You are someone that loves excitement and new things, and you're also a cheapskate. So this is frugal. This is a bad scenario for you.
One of the things which I really wanted, they were auctioning off 4 seats to the owner's box at a Lakers home game. You'd literally sit with the owner in their box. And I wanted that so bad. And I leaned over to Shelly. I was like, $500, $1,000? And then, of course, it went for $8,000. I was like, well, nope. Not me. And one of the funny things is that one of the celebrities everybody knew had a lot of money. The guy, the auctioneer, pointed at him and he said, I know how much money you have. You better bid something big. So in the end, he didn't bid on anything. The auctioneer totally called him out. He just raised his paddle. He's like, just take 10 grand.
Wow, that is so much money. I cannot even fathom. Toby, I'm glad you proved to be a man of the people still, as you could not participate with all these other billionaires.
I can go to lunch, but
speaking of the billionaire we brought in to finance Church Gear, the central production minister for Biltmore Church and stunt double for Pedro Pascal and Chris Hemsworth, Tyler Flores. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure how you lumped me in with Pedro Pascal and Chris Hemsworth. Those are just two very differently, two different looking guys. So
yeah,
that's ambitious.
We just assume your skill set just covers such a wide variety of, like, you have such a range.
And it's a correct assumption.
Yes.
It's a correct assumption. I'm not saying it was wrong. I'm just saying it was bold. It was a bold leap for you to jump right there.
See, Toby writes these and he only sees attraction. And he's like, oh yeah, attractive dude, like these other attractive dudes.
And he's also wearing a very suave leather jacket there. So
it is pouring rain in Asheville, North Carolina today. So I needed something that was going to keep the rain off.
Okay.
Doesn't leather just absorb the rain?
Not if you run through it really quick. And then you can, if you go rain jacket, then you don't look cool. If you leather jacket, you're like, oh, he's cool. But if you're just dwelling in the rain, it's problematic.
And Blake, have you ever thought about like cows out in the rain? They're all wearing leather.
Guys, real confession here. I had this dream of losing a bunch of weight and buying a leather jacket and looking really cool. And I'll just tell you, I've never bought that leather jacket.
You know what, buddy? Man, let me tell you, just buy the leather jacket anyway. You may just cross over into something cool adjacent.
What if that's the trick? What if a leather jacket just slims you down?
That's true. I mean, you're already the stunt double for Chris Farley, so.
And that's not a lie, but I'll tell you what is in our section of 5 Truths and a Lie, where every week we introduce our guest and we try to pick a lie out of that list. And it's getting near the end of the year, Toby. We're going to be totaling these up pretty soon. So
I do not have a good feeling about my score.
You need to score. All right. Number 1. I attended 3 separate colleges before getting my degree. Number 2, I once built the inside of a spaceship in my parents' garage.
That sounds amazing.
The real question is, how literal do we take it? Because it has to be a lie unless he's a genius. Number 3, I grew up in New Mexico.
Okay.
Number 4, I have been on 2 safaris. That's probably on all the Hollywood shoots he's been doing. Number 5, I was a manager at Chick-fil-A for 7 years. He's too funny to be a manager there. Managers there have to be so normal and like nice.
I've never worked at Chick-fil-A, so I don't know the protocol of managerial.
I didn't last there because I was too funny.
Oh, yeah.
Number 6, I live in a log cabin.
Okay, I'm locking in on number 1 already. I just wanted to grab it because my guess is that he did go to 3 separate colleges, but he never got his degree. And I'm just hoping, because I never got my degree. Okay, Blake, what you got?
That is probably the best logic you've ever had for one of these.
Thank you.
Oh, man. I will say he's not been on 2 safaris. He's been on 1 safari.
Okay.
Tyler, we're locked in.
You're locked in. You were both incorrect. The lie was the most generic of them all, and it was that I grew up in New Mexico. I've never even been to New Mexico.
I've been there. I'm, no offense to everybody who lives in New Mexico. You're not missing a whole lot.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Santa Fe is kind of fun, but yeah, there's just a lot of open spaces. It's like West Texas.
I like open space. I like open space.
Oh, currently there is land for sale in New Mexico. It is a ranch, and it is 760 square miles. So if you like open spaces.
How much is it going for?
I want to say it's like $160 million.
Okay, well, sure. If I had 160 million, Toby.
I thought you were a billionaire, Blake.
No, I said I'm a man of the people. I can't even get into these.
Man of the people.
If I have less money than you and you can't even bid on a ticket.
You weren't paying attention.
Okay, so you did get your degree. Tyler, I'm proud of you. You are more educated than I am. Why did it take you 3 schools?
Really and truly, I could not decide what I wanted to do. And it just took me a while before I finally landed at the University of Central Florida and got my degree in film.
Okay.
Nice.
And that's how he got into his stunt double career.
Yes. And
you've nailed it.
It makes perfect sense.
How did you build the inside of a spaceship in your parents' garage? Is this like a little Lego thing and you're really bending that truth?
No. So just before I went to university, so after college number 2, which was the community college, and was like, this sucks, can't do that. I decided to make a short film, like a science fiction short film. And so it was the inside of a spaceship. Yes, it was inside of a set of a spaceship, but it was full size. It was about 15 feet long and about 6 or 7 feet wide. And it was a lot of fun.
If you have a photo of that, please send after this.
And did you put that on your resume in order to get your job at Biltmore? Because I feel like that's such a production guy thing to do.
I didn't. The movie itself really sucked. Like it sucked royally because I spent probably like 8 months in what I would call pre-production. Like I was writing scripts and like designing sets, and I was so excited. But when I actually came down to it, I had done all that work and I hadn't really thought out because I didn't have a film degree at that point. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just had a camera, and I really just in the end just really skunked the finish. Just the actual thing really sucked. So no, it didn't go on my resume.
Maybe that's why we don't build the inside of a spaceship for the Church Gear podcast, because we're already afraid it might suck. And so this guarantees us success, Blake.
Toby, I'm flying a spaceship desk right now. That's what this giant desk looks like. Do you live in a log cabin because you're trying to be Abraham Lincoln, or is that just the only kind of houses they have over there in Asheville?
It is. There is a obscenely high number of log cabins in Western North Carolina. And so just by luck of the draw, the house we found that was fit for our family was a log cabin. Not actually a huge fan of log cabins, but that's what we've got. I mean, full on with the logs and the green roof, and we're out there in the woods.
That sounds peaceful.
Blake, I'm imagining you live in like a townhome, right? Is that how you would call it?
I don't know. Honestly, a condo and a townhome, never understood the difference.
Yeah. How funny would it be if your townhome was a log cabin setup amongst your entire neighborhood, which was all just like brick facades?
It'd be very dangerous because one candle falls over and we're all going down.
And I know how you love your candles with bath time.
Well, look, fall candles are fun times. Anything on the safaris to mention any lions or tigers or bears, or just, it wasn't as scary as you thought?
Truthfully, not as scary as I thought it was going to be. We did get charged by an elephant one time in which the driver literally put the van into reverse. It was like, we're backing up now. We're backing up. And I was pretty terrified. Also, so the second safari, we saw like a lot of lions, which was great. There was this I had a long telephoto lens, and the lion it sat down right behind the back wheel of the Jeep we were in. And I thought to myself, I want to get a photo of this lion. It's 5 feet away from me, but it's behind the back wheel. So I've got to squeeze out the side a little bit in order to get the angle, because I'm using a 70 to 200 Canon lens. And so now my body is out of the vehicle, just slightly. And the lion's just looking up. The sun is coming up. It is picturesque. This lion then turns and looks me square in the eyes. Ooh. And you don't think about how large the eyes of a lion are, but they're like 3 times the size of mine. And it saw my soul, and I just threw myself back. And someone was videotaping. They actually had a video of me just throwing myself back into the Jeep, because I never got the photograph. It was terrifying, truly terrifying. My life flashed before my eyes.
And did you change your shorts?
I didn't have to change my shorts. No, they put us in diapers before we started.
Tyler, you could have won a Pulitzer, man. Man, you really...
I skunked it again.
Blake, if you ever get eaten by a lion, I'm putting Tyler in your seat. This guy I love him already.
Oh, same. Yeah. I also have decided that our retirement job should definitely not, but also be driving safari buses, because you would be all, it'll be fine. Don't worry about the elephant. And I'll be like, Toby, we're going to die.
I kind of feel like Church Gear is the bus and you are the elephant bearing down on us, and we're trying to back this thing up, but it doesn't move that fast.
Ooh, I like that. Elephants are supposed to be wise. I'll take wise and large. All right, Tyler. Well, we know you're at least one of those things. You seem pretty wise so far, wisecrackers.
Thanks.
So give us, some of your production background. How did give us a quick snapshot of your background in production and what led to your role today, and how did that wisecracking nature make it here?
So obviously I already mentioned my background is in film video production. I really and truly, starting in middle school, it was volunteering at church, doing the thing. Partway through high school, I decided I sort of left behind live production and moved towards pre-produced video, which is why I went to school for an actual cinema degree. Went to work in the church world after I graduated college as a communications director. So I was producing content, but I had never forgotten my live production roots. So on the weekends, you could always find me usually in the video control room. I most of the time try to avoid the audio console because I'm pretty bad at it. But every weekend I was always there. When I moved up to North Carolina during COVID, I also moved into the communications department here. But again, every single weekend, I asked my boss, I said, I know we're supposed to be like taking photos on the weekends, but can I work in the production booth on the weekends? Because this is just so much fun for me. I love it. I love the momentum of a live produced show. And I know that they're hurting for volunteers. Can I just serve up there on the weekends? And my boss was awesome. And he said, yes. And that was basically right as soon as I started. When this department found itself without a director, I had already built relationships with this team. And so my boss now, he came to me and said, hey, man, you've been super plugged in and engaged with this department. How would you feel about leading it? So I moved from the communications department over to the production department here at Biltmore Church about a year and a half ago.
I love this guy. Blake, what speed do you listen to your podcasts at?
Oh, normal speed.
Okay. I love to listen to podcasts at 1.5 speed because I want people to talk faster and entertain me. Dude, Tyler's already at 1.5 speed and I'm loving it.
Tyler,
you told me I had to go fast. So I went ahead and I dropped it into the gear and I went.
Yeah, you did.
Tyler, you're going to go from communications to production there to now co-hosting the Church Gear podcast. So
yes.
The offer letter is in the mail.
And Blake, you're going to lead production at alongside Ryan Robb.
Which honestly, I could probably do because he went from communications to production. I'm doing communications, so this is getting dangerous here.
That's all you do is ever communicate.
Most of what I do is go to meetings. So if you're in on that, about 50 to 60% of my time is sitting in meetings. So
I'm going to crush it. People love me in meetings. You need someone to entertain you and to make fun of.
50 to 60% of your time is in the bath, Blake.
Well, what do you think I spend the rest of my time? It's in all your meetings. Hey, the bath, though, you get very wet. And another way you get really wet is hurricanes. Toby, why don't you ask our next question?
So, Tyler, most of us, I think, are aware of the impact of Hurricane Helene, but, you lived right in the heart of where it just had the biggest impact. Can you talk to us kind of about the reality of how it hit the community out there and how was Biltmore Church and your team affected through that?
Yeah, it's a hard pivot. But I'm something I didn't mention before was that I did grow up in Florida. So hurricanes were a really normal part of my reality. And the only reason I share that is so that when I say this, it has weight. I've never seen anything like what happened here before. And again, that's living for 30 years in Florida, and also going on hurricane relief trips and all the things that Baptist boys are going to do. They're going to go help dig people out.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything quite so widespread and quite so devastating as what happened here in Western North Carolina. And so the impact on our church family and community has been really, really massive. I mean, I've got a guy on my team. The storm was 7 weeks ago. I've got a guy on my team who's still not back in his house. He's still living on, like, sleeping on an air mattress in somebody's floor, with his two kids, because one of them's in college, and wife. They're staying in a 1-bedroom apartment with a friend. That's the impact. My boss still doesn't have clean running water at his house. Again, we are 7 weeks out from this thing, and that's the tip. There are whole communities that we still are not allowed to drive into because all there is one dirt path that's the Virginia boys came in and like plowed out for us. So it's so hard to put into words.
Yeah.
But there is a gravity and a weight to everything that we do right now. People come into church, and there is just that first week back after Helene had rolled through, because we had a week or two off. That first week back, it was like this deep breath of, I'm not going to say relief. It was just this like, here we are, we're together, we're looking at Jesus, and there is no place that any one of us. I have never heard our church community sing as loud as they did, clap as loud as they did, and just be so engaged with church. And then, so for me, leading this little tiny piece of Biltmore Church, the production, not just our staff, but our volunteers, we have like 200 volunteers. Obviously, checking in on them and making sure they're all right was a huge priority for us. And then once we got back together, for me, and this is still top of the bill, is everyone's in a different place right now. Like I said, I've got a guy and then like for me personally, I literally didn't have a tree fall on my property, not one. And I have I live in the woods, and I can't explain how, like, my road got a little messed up, and it was like, oh man, and the bridge is out. That's a bummer. It takes me an extra 10 minutes to get to and from work. That's so small. But like I said, there are people in all stages, people who have lost people, church members who literally watch their family members go under the water and they never came back up again. That's real. This is real. And all of us we're all sharing a space, right? Volunteers, lay people, everybody, we're all sharing a space. So I think our priority as leaders at Biltmore Church has been, how do we love well and help others to love well, to mourn with those who are mourning, to grieve with those who are grieving. We literally bought more stage lights for our East campus because of the number of funerals we were doing at that campus, and they didn't have good like stage light for on stage. Like this is real. This is right in front of us, and it's not going anywhere for a long time. And I think keeping that in front and saying Jesus is sovereign, Jesus is on the throne, Jesus is good, but we're still hurting. We're still hurting, and so leading through that has been top of mind for every single person that I've talked to, every department head, every staff member. Is just like, how do we love well? How do we show people that we're going to stand in the gap with them? And yeah, there's been all sorts of incredible efforts of hurricane, like real practical relief. We've got the Red Cross is literally staying in the wing over here to the right of me, which is fantastic. But as the days go on, it's less and less about those practical needs and more about helping people process through grief, trauma, all of those things, and just being present.
Yeah. When, the decision was made, like, okay, this thing is coming, this thing is here, we're going to stop services for a week or two and, assess, what was kind of the, the directive for the staff of like, we're going to mobilize the church to help, were there specific ways in which Biltmore Church said, okay, these are our goals now to, serve the community?
What was really incredible was how organic it was. I remember the day before the storm hit, there was a text that went out. It might have been a Teams message that was saying, hey, we know that when there's a lot of rain, there are a couple key valleys that tend to flood. And last time in 2021, we had a lot of rain and there were some places that got washed out. And so we just said, hey, we went and we bought like a couple pallets of water from Coke, because there's a Coke factory, like a Coke distribution center across the road. We bought a pallet of water. And we made sure somebody was on site the day after. That was like, well, we're just going to buy some water just in case people need water. There's going to be some folks who, but then obviously as the gravity of the thing came to light, what was really incredible was staff members and volunteer, like church members just started showing up at the church. There was an assumption. They just showed up and said, is there any way that we can help? And they brought with them donations. They brought with them whatever they had. We were raiding like the supply closet, the worship snack closet. It was just like, okay, we've got a box of Pop-Tarts in the worship snack closet. Let's pull it out. And it grew on day one after the storm from like, we had a pallet of water and an ice truck there's some confusion as to where the ice truck even came from. There's not clear consensus on where the ice truck came from, but we knew we had a pallet of water and an ice truck on day one. And it grew into where now we have hired a full-time employee who's managing. We turned our gym into a warehouse. And we got like pallet shelves and the whole deal, at a full-time employee, a part-time employee managing the requests that are still coming in. But that growth was entirely organic. It was just people showing up saying, how can I help? Our campus pastor was, our online campus pastor was fielding phone calls on like, oh, you got this donation, bring it here. Everybody was doing nothing to do with their job. They were just there with open hands. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
So were any of your campuses physically affected? Did any of your campuses flood or?
Not really. We had some water damage come down, but nothing that came up into the campus. There were one or two that literally the rain was just coming so hard that it found some seams and came down, but all of that was mostly on the face of walls, things like that. So nothing dire.
Yeah. So obviously as, ministers, there are hard times that come, and Hurricane Helene obviously is a, very big example of that. And a lot of times it's smaller, tragedies or hardships. How do you, shift your focus of like, okay, we got to make production happen to, okay, we've got to love people. How do you, as a team lead, then lead your people and encourage them to lead their people? How does that disseminate down to just care for people through crisis?
That's a great question. I don't know that there's any perfect answer to that question, but I think for the way that I have been led, and the way that I'm hopefully leading our team is to, one, we still got to do church, right? So people are going to show up. They have a certain level of expectation of they want to come in and experience an encounter with God. And part of our job, our role is to help them encounter God, to help facilitate that experience. So sometimes the best thing we can do is to do our jobs well. So sharing that, again, if I micro it down just to my team, helping them understand that it's okay for us to focus on our jobs right now. And that was hard. We all struggled with some level of guilt when they pulled some of us off the line of like giving out supplies and said, now go do your jobs. And it was tough for a minute. It was just like, but there's people like in the line right now. They're asking for water. They're asking for food. I can help. But realizing that the community of believers gathering together, that command of Scripture, it cannot be moved. And so because we know people are going to be coming back through the doors, at least in part, we know that our responsibility is still to help create an environment in which people can encounter Jesus easily, distraction-free, in an engaging way. That's still our jobs. So to challenge my team, hey, we're going to put our heads down and we're going to do our jobs. But the other half of that is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, which is the volunteer team is full of people with all sorts of trauma they're walking in with. Mm-hmm. So being way more intentional, hopefully we were intentional before, but definitely being way more intentional now with pulling volunteers aside and saying, hey, how are you doing? Talk to me. And then just listening, giving people hugs when they're crying and there have been tears. Just, hey, I'm here. Just talk me through it. We can't fix it. We don't have the resources or the ability to make their pain go away, but we can be present and be a community for our team. And I think the rest of it sort of works itself out. If we prioritize the gospel and prioritize caring for people, those two things together, then I'm satisfied with the day's work.
Yeah, that's great. As you know, zooming back out, Biltmore Church and specifically the production department, are there any big projects you guys are working on or were working towards? Were any of those interrupted by Helene, or what's coming up over the next couple of years that are kind of big directives for you guys?
Yeah. Truthfully, Helene did not throw too much of a wrench in any of our large projects. And again, most of that had to do with the fact that none of our buildings were really drastically affected. So we didn't have to pivot towards like, oh, we've got a massive repair job now in front of us. We got to rip out a wet system and replace it. None of that really happened. I think the worst was like a curtain that was wet. We've got to pull it out and get it laundered and put it back up. So any large projects we had, more or less stayed on our docket. They just got punted a little bit, because the church's financial resources moved and pivoted toward, Helene relief. So sometimes if I had we want to do an upgrade in one of our gathering spaces, okay, that's been punted. So really the biggest thing on our ticket right now is we're launching a new campus next year, in the Waynesville area, and that's still coming. And this is for me personally, I'm excited because this is my first time being in this chair while we launch a campus. So I want to make sure that, from a production perspective, that this is the best campus that we've built. Not because I want to spit on the guys who came before me, but I want to say that, hey, this was that at the end of it, when we finish up with Waynesville, our lead pastor, our creative pastor, they say, hey, that whole project, production was the easiest to deal with. And they delivered on helping to create a space that works for our teams, that works for us. And so we have been laser focused on engaging with our integrator, and just looking critically at every single piece of gear that's going into that building, to make sure that it's going to fit, that it fits what we've done before, and also sets a footprint for where we hope to go in the future.
So going back to your Chick-fil-A days, when
you're throwing it way back, Toby, that's in the Five Truths and a Lie section of this podcast.
When Biltmore launches a new campus, is it kind of like a franchise model where here is how we do a campus? It's always the same gear. It's always the same, setup as far as the production is concerned, or do you take it, as a one-off?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the easiest way to answer it is the way that it was explained to us. And that's if you were to put multi-site model churches on a spectrum of between 1 and 10 of if a 1 was basically every church is its own thing and they just kind of all share a name.
Yeah.
And then a 10 is every down to the nuts and bolts, everything is identical. you've got satellite preaching, you've got the same worship, you're piping in everything. If that's a 10, we're somewhere between a 7 and an 8. With the exception of during the worship service itself, we are much closer to a 9. But just overall, we're definitely on the more in line end. So if you were to visit any one of our campuses, with the exception of one that was built sort of in a weird time, you're going to find a Yamaha console. You're going to find CL3s everywhere, with the exception of broadcast, where we're still running a CL5. Praise, it's an old console. We're praying for a new one. But so you're going to find that Yamaha infrastructure everywhere. You're going to find the same lighting console, like just different iterations of the same lighting console everywhere. We do use what's come before as a blueprint. I believe that with every campus we've launched, we've stepped up our game a little bit. But more or less, we stick to a blueprint on what it is that we want. So that was why it was important for, as we were looking at it, saying, okay, let's look at what we've done before. How do we improve? Well, critically, not just like lob money at it, but really critically ask the questions: what wasn't working? What didn't work for the last 3 campuses we launched? And then try to fix it with this new iteration.
Will there be a specific staff member assigned to that campus for production?
No, unfortunately, our current model and just our team size doesn't allow for us to devote a staff member to a given campus. I'm really, really hoping and praying, and we're moving towards a more regional model where we can assign staff members to, like, production staff members to, like, hey, 2 or 3 campuses, this is your responsibility. As it is, if there was a thing that's frustrating for me right now, and not with leadership, just with the situation exactly as it is that we have a hard time like resourcing other campuses well in terms of production. We've got to farm out a lot of, like, hey, just train the volunteers, which is great. I love empowering volunteers, but there's always a ceiling on what that volunteer can do, or even is willing to do when it comes to, like, actually solving real production problems.
I was just hoping that, you assign a staff member to that campus and they also get an LS916 in their office.
You spotted that, huh?
Oh, yes. We know those well at Church Gear. I mean, Blake wouldn't know that from a, Chick-fil-A sandwich, but.
Hang on, Toby. Well, I would know both, all right? I have picked up and dropped picked up a lot of LS16s in my day.
It's not even an LS16. That's cute.
It's in my office because I think I mentioned earlier that my background in audio, like, I started mixing audio in middle school, high school, and then I just sort of left it behind for video. But now as a production director, I felt really, really like I just didn't have enough knowledge. So the LS9 is in my office because I was really giving myself a fundamentals course on Yamaha consoles again. And this dinosaur actually has a lot of the same backbones pieces in it that a lot of the newer Yamahas have. So if you want to know, the reason it's in there is because I've been sitting there like, okay, I'm putting into this mix. This puts the effects. Okay, I'm just talking to a microphone. It's really embarrassing, but it's been fun.
Toby, I hope when they dissect me, they'll say, this has a lot of the similar backbones to a modern day human, just not all of them.
I was going to say, why you continue to work with me, you're like, well, that dinosaur still has a lot of, good applicable information inside of him.
The problem is, Toby, is depending upon the day, you are 30 or you are 80. Like, I can't call you a dinosaur all the time.
I thought you were going to go down to like 11 or 80.
Well, I'm using my own metric for maturity. So yeah, we are 11 and then your body can be 80.
I do remember we did a group exercise at one of our all staff quarterlies, and different teams divided up. And one of the questions was, what age does Toby act like? And we got either 12 or 100. Both answers.
That's accurate.
Yes. Blake, do you have any burning questions for our friend Tyler? I want to get to the disaster story, but if there's something rattling around in your little dinosaur brain, I don't want to miss it.
I'm just trying to stay out of the way when I don't have good questions. I think Tyler here was so on fire that I was like, I don't have a great deal to add. I just wish we could help more so. And I think we really need to stop naming hurricanes after people. The only person that was happy about Helene was any girl named Katrina. Like, that's a bad beat. Like, if you're named Helene right now, you're moving out of North Carolina. That's a tough life.
Sure. Yeah.
We do have a Hurricane Blake here at Church Gear, and he does destroy a lot of things.
And that's why people don't name their kids after Blake anymore.
Yeah.
But if they did, it'd kind of be a disaster. So, Tyler, could you give us, a specific moment? This almost feels a little on the nose, like, because right now they're under a disaster. Does this still work, Toby? You asked this question. I can't do it.
So you gave us a prompt for another story where everything went wrong, and I'd love to hear that story if you want to share it.
Yeah, no. So last Thanksgiving, so right around this time of year last year, I had taken, and if you guys have worked at church, you know Sundays off are precious.
Yes.
You don't get many of them. Literally, we have an allotment we're allowed to take. It was one of my Sundays off. It was the Sunday after Thanksgiving. I had just come back from seeing my family in Florida, and it was Sunday morning, and I did not set my alarm. I was just so excited because my alarm goes off at 5:30 on Sunday mornings, and I was just so delighted that I wasn't going to have to get up at 5:30 that Sunday morning. So around 6 that Sunday morning, I get a text to our production group chat, and it's from one of my systems guys. He's almost always the first one at the church. It was 3 words: major video issues, period.
Oh.
And I saw it, and I thought, I'm off. Like the sound woke me up. I looked at it and said, man, I'm off. I rolled over. So then I threw a question mark. Long story, but the video router at the heart of our video system had died, just up and quit. The power supply just said, I'm not playing games anymore. I'm out.
It had been playing games before. Had that been fun?
Yes. No, not so much. Our router was old. It was an outdated router. And I had actually already warned our senior team that hey, this thing is going to die eventually, not actually believing that it would just quit. You know, a lot of times production gear quits in phases, right? It'll this input and output's just not working anymore. Let's move it over. Video and audio gear alike. It just, usually you lose buttons, you lose functionality, but the brain of the thing still works. But not our video router. What?
Toby, I'm going to quit in phases as well. You know, I don't know how many buttons I have left.
Well, the funny thing is you did it in reverse. Your brain stopped working first, but several still buttons and ins and outs still work.
I don't know, man. They're a little squishy to still work.
So I get in there, and I'm obviously I get up out of my bed and I'm going into the church, and I get the phone calls. I'm making phone calls to my boss, to anybody I can think of, saying, hey, this is what's going on. And my boss, of course, is like, well, what can we do? What can we do? I said, I think I can get you one projector and a camera, maybe a camera straight. I think I can get you that. He's like, what about lyrics? I was like, no, I cannot get you lyrics. I might be able to get you lyrics instead of a camera. He's like, oh yeah, that would be better. I'm like, okay, so I can get you lyrics instead of I can route something directly to one of the projectors. Because of course your router is handling everything. Anything there's, especially in this digital age, everything's coming in to this brain, and then it's sending it so many places. So I get there, and all of my guys are just sort of standing in the rack room, just looking at it, like looking at it's gonna solve a problem. And I see we had a fully functional patch bay. Our patch bay was a 1-to-1 patch bay. Not all churches our size have a 1-to-1 patch bay, especially with digital routing. You don't really need them anymore. But ours, because of the age of our brain, we had one. So I said, okay, let's just take these things one input at a time. And meanwhile, the clock's counting down, right? And we're literally, we've got patch cables, we're running, just 1, 2, 1, 2. No, that doesn't work. And you're getting closer and closer to the service. And we pop, okay, now we've got 2 screens. This is phenomenal. We've got 2 screens. And then I would be doing something else. We've got camera 3. Camera 3 is live. And my volunteers are all just standing, just looking. And I said, guys, just don't leave. If we get to the service time and I don't have anything for you to do, then you can go home. But for now, just so they're all just standing there looking at us. And very fortunately, we had one of our volunteers is a network engineer. And he got here and he was so excited. He had lived for that moment. And so he kind of he shouldered us all out of the way and was like, no, I know what to do. This is the moment I've been training for. And just crazy. I'm pretty sure that anybody who came to church that day never noticed that anything went wrong. We were entirely just patch cables, just straight patch cables, and a couple I'm blanking on the name of the things, but when you can split a single, I'm blanking. But we had 4 or 5 of our cameras of 8 running. But for anybody that walked in, they just had church, while the rest of us literally were just sitting on the floor panting, because it was just a crazy, crazy day in which everybody pulled their weight. And somehow, I think God multiplied the time. We got the thing up and running. We ran off those patch cables we ran no router for, I think, 3 months.
So was that scarier, or the lion peering into your soul?
Man, that is a great question. I got to give it to the Lion. I mean, he saw all the way down, and I still haven't recovered in some ways.
Okay, I have a curious question that we can cut if it's awkward. You're a networking guy. We've all been there in a situation where, someone comes up to you and they're just like, Toby, I know what we're doing here. This is going to be great. And that guy delivers sometimes, and that guy doesn't deliver sometimes. Was the networking guy that day he lived for, was he like bringing stuff back to life amazingly, or were you just kind of?
Yeah, he actually did. If he hadn't shown up that day, we would not have gotten anywhere near as close to where we did. He had just a fundamental understanding of networks that we didn't have. We do now. Our team was a little younger, a little newer, and that lesson taught us. It's a fun fact that like our team, there is only one member of our production team that's been on our team for more than 3 years, and also that is older the age of 40. The rest of us are all relatively young. I'm closing in on 40, and he's been on the team for 20 plus years. But so like. The reality is I've got a lot of young guys on my team that have a ton. They're some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, but every problem they encounter is the first time they've met it. Whereas this guy who showed up, he's just a volunteer who does networking on the side. He'd seen that sort of problem before. So he was able to solve it.
What's his name? Shout him out.
His name is Justin Rhodes.
Justin Rhodes. Everybody needs a Justin Rhodes.
Yeah, we do. All right, Tyler, we like to wrap all our episodes with something we call a tech takeaway, and we'd love it if you can distill all the wisdom you gave us into one or multiple. Just what's a key takeaway that any church of any size can apply from today's message?
No, not elevating us to that. Today's episode.
I'm elevating Tyler to that.
Sure.
He was preaching.
That's kind. I think combining just everything I've learned along with some of the stuff that's been recent through Helene, I think that it's really, really easy to let the production stuff take the front seat and say, this is, man, I want, and we production folks, we give ourselves excuses, right? We say, hey, I just want to, I want to achieve excellence. Excellence is a really great churchy buzzword that we're like, hey, we're just striving for excellence. We're going to give God our best. That's phenomenal. I love that. I think God loves that. But if it comes at the expense of the people who are helping to make it happen, then I think it's not worth it. If it comes at the expense of actual, real gospel work, then I think it's not worth it. I had a volunteer on my team who he struggled to keep up with everyone else, and when he's on the schedule, it's hard. But when my team came and said, hey, I think we should talk about moving him from the team, I said, not a chance. We're going to find a place for him to continue to serve as long as he's willing to serve. And we're going to love him and put his needs first always, because this thing is not about the show. This thing is about Jesus, and Jesus is about the people. So if Jesus is about the people, then I'm going to make everything we do about the people and reaching them. So regardless of what size church anyone who's listening is at, put your people first. Whether you have one volunteer or 20, find out their needs, get into their lives, and then they will be the best volunteer you've ever had. They're going to show up and they're going to give you your best. And that's all that you can ask for. So my takeaway is not like stick this piece of gear in and it's going to make things better. My thing is prioritize people and the gospel, and God will honor it every single time.
Man, I could run through a brick wall. This is the podcast episode I needed of this day, Toby.
I told you he was preaching. Today's message brought to you by Tyler.
I love that. Tyler, a lot of preachers end with an altar call. If you were going to end with an altar call of things to plug, what would you point people towards?
I'm not big on plugging things. So I'm not sure I have anything for you today, guys.
He's got all his plugs out on those network switchers, whatever that day was.
He's currently plugging the LS916.
Hey, listen, don't hate on it.
Yeah.
It's a great little console.
That's right.
Hey, I like that little ad for us. It's a great little console.
That's right. And you can get it at churchgear.com.
There we go.
Hey.
Well, Tyler, sincerely, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a really great episode, man.
It meant a lot to me.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
Blake, I figured out what's wrong with Church Gear.
Oh, goody. What is it this time?
So legit, like our router, our company brain, me, is overloaded, and like you're warning people around, like our network's going to die, our router's going to die. So as a church gear should recognize, hey, we've outgrown Toby's brain, and we need to farm some of the brain power out to the rest of the people, right?
Yes, if only you would let us. So yeah, we need to replace some of your buttons and give some other people some buttons. And you know what buttons do? They send things, don't they, Toby?
What kind of things should my buttons send then?
We should put new buttons in you that just every time we press it, it sends the Church Gear podcast to a friend that needs it.
Ooh, I have friends.
To someone that needs it. Let's push those buttons. If they need an encouraging message, today is a really good episode to send. And especially if they were in like a tragedy. I mean, Tyler really had some great perspective.
Yeah, and I do quickly realize that if my brain is close to dying, your brain has been dead for decades.
Have you ever heard of a zombie?